Hello and welcome to this week's episode of GameMaker for Beginners. In this week's episode we're going to look at how to create another classic retro computer game, and this week's game is going to be Atari's early classic Asteroid. Now those who remember Asteroids will remember it's a top-down shooter where you have to control a flying triangle spaceship, and you have to blow up asteroids that are kind of floating all around the level, and when you hit those asteroids they will divide in two. For the younger members of the audience who don't remember Asteroids, it's a great game. You might remember instead Geometry Wars, which is a very similar top-down shooter, but equally excellent. So without any further ado, let's get stuck right in. The first thing I need to do is create a sprite for our spaceship, our avatar. Now I'm going to create a new sprite by right-clicking Sprite and going Create Sprite. And I'm going to rename this sprite Avatar Sprite. And I'm going to click Edit Sprite and then click the little white page here that says Create New Sprite. I'm going to keep it small, so I'm going to keep the default settings of 32 pixels by 32 pixels for the size of my new sprite. Double click on the picture and zoom in. And this is going to be really simple. I'm just going to create a triangle for my avatar sprite, much like in the style of the original Asteroids. And there we go. And that'll do. And click the little tick button here. Click center to make sure you've centered your sprite. And then click OK. Now I'm going to create a bullet, so I'm going to right click sprites again, go Create Sprite, rename this Bullet Sprite. I'm going to click Edit Sprite, click the white page again to create a new sprite, click OK to select the default settings, double click the picture, zoom in, and I'm going to use the little circle tool down here to create a bullet. I'm going to make it a slightly different colour. There we go, and click OK. Click the little tick and then click center once again, and just click and drag that right over the center of your bullet and click OK. Last thing I'm going to need for now is an enemy sprite, so I'm going to click Create Sprite again. I'm going to name this Enemy Sprite, click Edit Sprite. Once again, click the white page, click OK to set the default height and width values. Double click the image to edit, zoom in using your middle mouse wheel, and I'm just going to draw out a kind of a rocky kind of asteroid here. There we go, and that's my asteroid there. Perfect. And I'm going to fill this one as well with a bit of colour. There we go. Doesn't look much like an asteroid, but that's quite okay. Click center once you've edited your sprite and you've got it as you want it, and then click OK. So now I've got 3 sprites. I'm going to make one more. I'm going to create sprite. I'm just going to make a wall sprite. And this is to keep the player within the game. Click Edit, click the white page to make a new sprite, select the default values, double click and hold in, and then I'm just going to paint fill it. Doesn't really matter what colour my wall is because we're going to make sure that we can't really see that anyway, so that's fine. Now let's get to the interesting part. Let's make our player object. So right click Objects and click Create Object, and we're going to call this Avatar Object. Keep it simple, and down below you'll see there's an option to select the sprite that you want to be applied to your player's avatar, and we're going to select the avatar sprite and go Add Event. And under the events, the first thing we want to do is we want to add in the movement for our player. Now, I'm going to use the keyboard controls for mine, so I'm going to click Keyboard, and I'm going to use left, right, up, and down. Now, you might want to use WASD if that's easier for you. I do prefer WASD myself, but I'm just selecting these for today. And then for each of these movement events that we've got set up, these keyboard events, then one at a time I'm going to go in and I'm going to select the vertical or horizontal speed depending on if it's left or right or up and down. So for the left keyboard event, which I've got clicked here selected, you can see it's highlighted in blue. Left, I'm going to need to change the horizontal speed of the player. So if you head to the right of your object, you'll see under the Move submenu over here, there's a white arrow pointing towards the right. And if you hover over it, it says Speed Horizontal. Drag that on. Now, for the left speed, we need to set that to a minus number. So let's select that to -5 for now. And then let's do right. So then click the right keyboard event. Once again, drag across the horizontal speed, and instead of being -5 this time, we set it to 5. and that's a positive number. Now for the up key and the down key board events, we're going to select the vertical speed for this one. So with my up key selected, I'm going to drag across speed vertical, and I'm going to set this to -5, that's going up. And for the down one, I'm going to drag across speed vertical from the move submenu again, which is the white arrow facing down. And I'm going to set 5 for that, which is a positive number, and that will move the player down. Now I'm going to click OK here, and I'm going to create a room so we can do a little bit of prototyping. So right click rooms, click create room, it will bring up a new blank room, and in a minute we're going to keep it fairly standard. And go to your objects tab if it's not already open, click object tab and you should see your avatar object, give that a click, and then click and place that anywhere in the room just by clicking your left mouse button. And click the little tick button. Now if we go up to the run the game option at the top, which is the green play button, and click that, we should be able to do a little prototype of our level, and now we should have an avatar that kind of moves up, down, left and right when we press the up, down, left and right keyboard buttons, and we can see we can. Perfect, there we go, and it's working just as we want it to. Now at the minute we've got a grey background, so it's very hard to see what's going on, so let's close that off, go back into our room, go into the backgrounds tab of your room, and then where it's got draw background colour, at the minute we've got a grey colour selected. Double click on that grey colour, and I'm going to select black because it is asteroids and it is meant to be in space. Click the little tick button, and then if we run the game again now, we should be able to see our avatar much more clearly. And it should only take a second for it to run. There we go, and we can see, yeah, perfect. Now our player's moving around, absolutely brilliant. So we've got our basic movement for our player now. So let's click X. The next thing we need to do is we need to make it that our avatar points in the direction that our mouse is, so that when we're firing at the asteroids, we can actually aim at each individual asteroid. Before we do that though, I need to fix something that I've done with my avatar sprite up here. If you double click your avatar sprite, the direction, the default direction for GameMakers sprites is facing off to the right, 90 degrees. Now mine's facing upwards, so what I need to do is I need to spin my avatar around 90 degrees so he's facing towards the right. To do this, I'm going to go to rotate under the transform menu in my sprite, and it's automatically come up 90 degrees as the angle there clockwise. You've also got some options down there for the default kind of 90, 180 and 270. So I'm just going to click OK. Click the tick button. This is important because my my avatar will face with the tip of the spaceship facing wherever my mouse is on the screen. So I need it to start off facing in the right direction, which is perfectly to the right. And let's click OK. Now if we go back into avatar, let's make it aim for where my mouse is. To do this, what we need to do is we need to set a step event, which is an event that GameMaker will check kind of every millisecond of the game almost. So let's go into add event, and you'll see there's a step option there. Click step and then select just step on its own from that option. Now what we need to do here is some very simple coding using GameMaker's built-in coding language GML. To do that, head down to the control tab of your object, make sure you've got step selected, and then drag over the execute code option, which is under the code submenu there. Now what we need to do here is we need to tell GameMaker to change the angle that our avatar is facing, and we do this by typing in image underscore angle equals. So we're saying, right, change the angle of our image of our sprite, and what we want to do here is we want to set it to face the direction that our mouse is pointing. So to do that, we type point underscore direction, open brackets, x comma y comma mouse underscore x comma mouse underscore y, close brackets, and then add a little semicolon at the end to say that you're done. So image underscore angle equals point underscore direction, open brackets, x comma y comma mouse underscore x comma mouse underscore y, close brackets, semicolon, and then tick that button there, and then click OK. So what we've said is every millisecond of the game, make sure that the image angle of our avatar is pointing in the direction of where the mouse is on the screen, as in the X and Y coordinates of the mouse on the screen, wherever that may be. Click OK. Let's run the game once again. run a quick prototyping check, and now wherever I move my mouse in the game, my avatar, my ship, should turn to face it. This is important for the firing mechanics. So if I click on my game screen, and you'll see wherever I'm moving my mouse, automatically my ship is turning to face it. That's brilliant, that's what we need. So let's do the next thing now, which is to make it the firing mechanic for the ship's gun. So what we need to do is make a new object. So right click objects, go create object, and we're going to make the bullet object. So I'm going to rename this object bullet_obj. Now we made a sprite for it earlier, so from the sprite menu, click the little blue button, select your bullet sprite, whatever that might be, and then click OK. Easy as that. So now we've got a bullet, what we need to do is tell the avatar to fire that bullet when we click our left mouse button. So go back into your avatar object and go add event, and this time choose mouse and choose global mouse down the button, has to be global mouse, and do global left button. So global left button is the event, and the action is, if we go to main one, we want to create a moving object, a moving bullet essentially. Now underneath the objects submenu of main one, the second icon along is a yellow object icon with a green arrow, and if you hover your mouse over it, you'll see it says create moving. Drag that icon across. The object we want to create when we click the left mouse button is obviously the bullet, so click that, choose bullet. Now it will spawn at the X and Y coordinate 0, 0. We need to set relative, so it will spawn wherever we are as the player. Set the speed to 10 or something, and set the direction to image_angle. What we're saying here is when we click the left mouse button, create a bullet object at the X and Y locations of where we are, because we ticked relative. The bullet will move at a speed of 10, and the bullet will go in the direction of whatever angle the avatar was facing at, our spaceship was facing at the time we clicked it. Click OK, and then click OK again. Now let's run the game and test this and see how it's looking. Fingers crossed. Whenever we turn our avatar, we should be able to see that it starts firing bullets now when we click the left mouse button. So here we go. We've got our spaceship here. It's still following where I'm going, and if I click left now, there we go. Perfect. We'll see. Fantastic. And we've got our, there we go, we've got our firing avatar and it moves around. That's what we want. Brilliant stuff. Right, well, let's create an enemy now and let's make it interesting. Let's create our enemy object. So go back to object, click create object. We'll call this enemy object. Keep it nice and simple. For your sprite, we've already made an enemy sprite, our asteroid, which doesn't look much like an asteroid, I'll be the first to admit. So select your enemy sprite asteroid. Okay, and go add event, create, and what we want is our asteroid to move around in kind of a random kind of direction. So what we'll do there is under the move menu over here, click the grey compass arrows, drag that over, set direction to random, open brackets, 360, as in 360 degrees, close brackets, and set the speed to 5. Now it's important to note that under the direction where I've typed to random 360, I'm saying move in a random direction, any of the 360 degrees. There are no spaces in that whatsoever, so it's random, open brackets, 360, close brackets, no spaces. Speed of 5, that sounds okay. Actually, we said it's speed 7, make it a bit harder. Remember, the higher you speed, the faster it will move, the harder it is. And click OK. And there we go. And go add event, and what we're going to do now is say when the bullet hits it, just destroy the asteroid. So go add event, we go collision, so when the enemy collides with the bullet, select bullet, go to main one over here on your right, and this little recycle bin icon, like you get on your desktop on your PC, is destroy instance. Drag that over. So what we're saying is, when we, the enemy, hit the bullet, we ourselves are destroyed. Drag over a second one, and also the other, as in the bullet, the other object is also destroyed. So when the bullet hits us, when the bullet hits the enemy, when the enemy hits the bullet or vice versa, it destroys the asteroid and the bullet. Perfect. Okay, click OK. Now what we need to do is we need to make a spawner, and our spawner is going to spawn our enemies. Okay, so go create object, call this spawner. We don't want a sprite attached to this. What we want is 2 events. We want a create event and we want an alarm 0 event. under the create event, select your create event, go to your main 2 menu, and you'll see this little clock icon there. That's set alarm. Alarms are a timing event in GameMaker that allows us to set things to happen at a certain time. Drag set alarm across. Now we want a new asteroid to spawn every second. Instead of telling it in seconds though, we need to tell GameMaker what it is in steps. Now there's 30 steps to a second. So I want the alarm to go off 1 second after we've created the spawner, which would be 30 steps. So under number of steps in the alarm, set 30. Leave it as alarm number 0 because that's the alarm we want it to happen at. Now, right click that and click copy. We'll come back to that in a second. Go into alarm 0 now, click on the alarm 0 event, right click and paste the alarm you've just copied, and then go over, and what we want to do is go to main 1, and under main 1, select the yellow light bulb object, which is create instance, and select our enemy object as our enemy there, and click relative. So what will happen is with the spawner, when it's first created, it will set the alarm to 1 second, 30 steps. When the alarm goes off, it will create the enemy object, and then it will set the alarm back to 1 second. So a second later, it will go off again, make another enemy, and again, make another enemy, and again, another enemy. And it will keep on every 1 second, there'll be a new enemy in the game somewhere, and that's what we want. Okay, click OK. We need to do one more thing in the enemy object. Also in the enemy object's create event, we want to make it spawn at a random location. To do this, in our enemy object's create event, go back over to the jump submenu of the move tab, and we want, there's one here that's jump to random, which is a green arrow pointing a little question mark. Drag that over and then click OK. All that means is when the enemy's first made or created, it will jump to a random position in our game level, which is what we want. We don't want them all spawning in the same location. This will make it a bit more interesting. We'll never know quite where they're coming from. And one more thing in the enemy object, go add event, go other, go outside room, and we want to go to jump to start and click OK. Right, let's go back into our game room. What we need to do now, the last little thing before we can give a proper playtest, is to place the enemy spawner into the room. Without placing the enemy spawner in the room, nothing will happen. No enemies will appear. So go to your Objects tab in your game room, click in the box here, select spawner, and just click anywhere in the room. You can have 1 or 2 spawners, it's up to you. I'm going to have 2 to make it a bit more difficult. And you can see it comes up with a little blue question mark. That's because we've got no sprite attached to the spawner. The spawner itself is invisible, as we want it to be, and that's fine. Click the little tick, and then run the game, and let's see how this goes. Fingers crossed it'll be okay. And what should happen now is I should be able to move around in the game level. I should be able to shoot a gun from the front of my ship, which will point wherever my mouse is, and there should be some asteroids floating around, and if the bullets hit the asteroids, it should destroy them. There we go, you see. See when it's hitting the asteroids, it is destroying them, but what seems to be happening is that the enemies themselves aren't spawning from, they are kind of spawning from random directions, yeah. Lots of them are spawning from where I've actually placed the spawner there, which is a bit annoying. So, there's tons. So what we need to do here is go back into your, close it down. I made a bit of a mistake here. Go into your enemy object. Where it said outside room, don't go jump to start position. Cut that off. Instead, go down to your main 1 tab here and drag on destroy the instance. Make sure it's ticked self. Click OK. What this means is now, where these asteroids are going outside of the room, they'll just destroy themselves, which is good, because we don't want loads jumping back to where the spawner is. There we go. There we go, and they're a bit more random now. Perfect. Oh, clicked off there. And you can see a problem here. I've flown off the level. I don't know where I am. So click the X button. What we need to do, remember we made this wall sprite earlier, let's make a wall object. So click object, go create object, call this wall object, select the sprite as the wall sprite, and then go add event. Oh no, click solid, there we go. And then untick visible, click OK. Go into your avatar object, go add event, collision with the wall object, select the wall object there from the collision menu. And then over here, under the jump submenu of the move tab, you'll see there's a white line with a green arrow bouncing off it, and when you hover your mouse over it says bounce, drag that over. Change it from solid objects to all objects, and click OK. And likewise, let's make the enemies bounce off it as well. So go into your asteroid, go add event, collision, wall, drag over the bounce again, select all objects rather than solid objects, click OK. Go into your room, and now we've got to place this wall all around. So I'm going to turn off the grid up here so I can see my room a little bit more clearly. Zoom out using the middle mouse button. Set your wall object, and then place it. Now I'm holding down Shift and Control and left clicking to mass place my wall. Ooh. I kind of fluffed it up there a little bit. Right. And I'm just going through and I'm just deleting those ones that I don't need there, because there's no point having game objects and instances in the game you're just not going to use. Okay, it will eat up your memory. Click the tick button. We've now got a wall, so I should bounce off the game level. The enemy should bounce off the game level. We shouldn't be able to see the wall because I've unticked visible, meaning if it's not visible, it is invisible. So let's see how it's looking. Ah, good. And we see, yeah, excellent. Our enemies are bouncing off it. Blimey, O'Reilly, there's a lot of them here. Okay, we might have to slow down the rate at which the enemies spawn by clicking the alarm and changing the alarm from 30 steps maybe to 60 or 70 or 90, you know, whatever it might be. And we also need to do one more thing. At the minute, there's no danger for us. We're invincible. What we need to do is say that when the enemy hits us, then we die. And we have to restart the level. So go back into your avatar, go add event, go collision again, select the enemy object, and go down to the main one tab over here, and we want to restart the room here. So drag that over, which is down at the bottom. You've got the rooms tab, and you've got the third one along, says restart room. Okay, click OK. Oh, we want to do one more thing actually. We want to set a score, don't we? Go back into your avatar, okay, and go to add event, go create, go down to the score tab, and you've got set score here. Drag that over, keep it at 0, new score equals 0, so when we create the game the score is 0. Okay, perfect, and click OK, and then bullet, go into your bullet object, go add event, go collision with enemy, and go back to your score tab over here, drag across set the score again, and this time tick relative and select 5 on there and click OK. And what that means is when the bullet hits the enemy object, the score is going to go up by 5. Click OK. Okay, and so we've now added the score to our bullet object, so our score goes up every time we hit the enemy. We've set our score at 0 when we start, and what we need to do now is add a draw event, and this is where we're going to draw the score onto the screen so we can see it very clearly. So choose add event draw, go to your draw little tab down here. We need to do two things. First of all, there's a person icon, it looks like a little person. There's draw self under the drawing submenu, drag that over. That's going to make sure we draw our avatar sprite, and we always need to draw self. Whenever we add any of these draw options, we need to do draw self. Then we need to go to our score over here, and we need to set the draw score option, which is little score icon with a green outline. Drag that over, and let's change the X and Y coordinates to 50-50. That's just a placement on the screen. 50 pixels in from the left is the X, 50 pixels down from the top is Y, so about here on the screen. And click OK. So that's going to draw the word score and then the total of the score there. And then what we need to do now is we need to go to fonts, right click fonts and go create font. Select a font that you want your thing to be. I'm going to select Cordia New, that sounds good. I'm going to, from the font menu there, I'm going to rename it Cordia Font. I'm going to click OK. So we've now got Chord Your Font under the fonts, right click, create font. And then what we're going to do is under our draw in the avatar object now, go back to your draw tab. Under settings, you'll see there's a little T icon that's set font if you hover your mouse over it. Drag that over and select your Chord Your Font. So that, and click OK. That means that when we draw the value of the score, when we write on the screen, it will write it in that font. And the last thing we need to do under the settings is set colour. So let's drag that over. Select a colour that you want it to be. Now I'm going to change mine so it's roughly the same colour as my avatar. Click OK. And then click OK. And what we should be able to see now, if we preview the game, we should be able to shoot the asteroids. And when we shoot them, the score goes up. And yeah, so we should be able to see our score on the screen now as we shoot the asteroids. So let's give it a little play test. So we see score 0 up there, and let's start killing some enemies. Oh, I died before I killed anything because I'm rubbish. And there we go, we can see the score very clearly is going up. There we go. And we've got a very basic retro asteroid style game made in GameMaker. Now there's a couple more interesting things we could do with this. Okay, and we'll look at those in another tutorial, such as when we shoot the asteroid, we want to make it kind of split into two, and that's a nice little technique. But for now, this is perfect. You can see we're bouncing off the walls. Okay, so we've got our Asteroids retro game, a very basic working prototype. So thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you soon for another Game Maker for Beginners.